Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here, Friday the 31st of January 2020. So after a bit of a break, I'm back. So let's get the 2020 party started. And I'm not referring to Brexit, I'm referring to getting the Fury SS built up and also the A70 Lightning over here built up as well. We're going to concentrate on the Fury today because with the Lightning that's still in a little bit of limbo because I'm waiting for relined and bored barrels to be ready for collection, and that should be towards the end of next week, i.e. in about a week's or so time. So in the meantime, what we're going to do is carry on where we left off with the E35SS. So we're on the final clean build, and what I wanted to do was get the bottom end into a position where we can put this into the rolling chassis as soon as possible. And in the last video we had a bit of an abortive attempt to mount up the oil pump and its drive spindle, which we did successfully in the end, but without all the drive etc that needs to go on the end of the crank, which you have to fit first. So the oil pump was duly deinstalled and all the components were put together for the crank end, so we can install those first. So with respect to the crank end, it's an Enfield end feed oil supply. But on this side, what we've got to do first on the shaft is we've got to fit the idler gear, which is that one, that then spins the gear above it for the cam chain drive. And that cam chain drive gear sits on a spindle that goes in that hole there. And there's the spindle. And then on the outside of the crankshaft at this end, we've got the worm drive for the oil pump that mates into the oil pump drive spindle here through that worm. So what we've got to fit on the end of this shaft first before we put the oil pump and its spindle back in is we've got a spacer washer, we've got the helical drive for the cam chain wheel that's fixed in position by a woodruff key, and that is also marked, if I can find it, there it is on the top there, that's the timing mark. So this surface needs to be fitted outwards, and also on that woodruff key that slots just in the end, I'll try and line that up for you so you can see it without dropping it. There it is. In the end of the worm drive, there's that slot there that the same woodruff key slots into to prevent this from spinning. You can't believe that it's just that small surface area holding that key component in place. If that starts spinning, you lose oil pressure. And then on finally on the end of that you've got the securing nut as well, which goes onto these threads, 9/16 UNF. And it goes on far enough so that it then leaves the smooth end of the spindle here exposed, and that then mates into the oil seal there on the timing cover. So we've got all the components in place to do that job, but in addition what we're going to do as well is we're going to replace the crankcase half securing studs and nuts with what's supposed to be, i.e. 2 3/4 bolts. So we'll do that job first, and then once we've done those two jobs, we're actually going to fit the bottom end into the frame on these two mounting points. So we've got the bottom spindle there, and we've got the front spindle there. With the bottom spindle, I've had to make this up, and I've just got to tap that end, which is 3/8 UNF, a bit more because the thread doesn't go quite far enough down to knit properly, and I don't really want to use all these washers that I've got at the moment to space it out. And you'll notice as well on the inside of that there's a spacer, which is correct. Quite why the crankcase casting doesn't fit between these lugs neatly, I have no idea, but for some reason they decided to put a spacer at that end. If anybody can provide any highlights as to why on earth they would do that, then please enlighten me, because I have no idea. Right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to place these studs and nuts, I think there's 7 of them, with those bolts, and that'll tidy that up no end, and I'll bring you back. Okay, bolts in, that looks a lot neater. That's sorted, and also I've just run the die down the bottom engine mounting stud just to extend that thread, so that's all done. So next thing, on to fitting the components on the end of the crankshaft. Okay, spacer in, and there's the woodruff key in place. So now I'm going to slide on the cam drive pinion, and then we'll see how much of that woodruff key sticks out for the oil worm, but it looks sufficient. It might be a bit too much, we might have to trim that down, but we'll check that out in a second. Okay, cab drive pinion in, woodruff key end is sticking out there, and it goes into that slot on the drive, and it looks to be about right, so let's just push it on now and see what it looks like. Okay, there it is, with a bit more light. A little difficult to see, but the woodruff key is in the slot there, and the worm has pushed all the way on flush to the timing pinion, so it's all good. So we'll now put the stiffener on this end, no washer, and that's that job done, and then we can put the idler spindle and its drive into the hole above, and we'll need to put the cam chain on at the same time. Okay, there we are, done, tightened up, and I've also got the oil drive spindle inserted, just slipped straight in and engaged on the worm. So now we can go and reinsert the pump now, with its cover and its gasket at the back to seal the feed side. Okay, there we are. Pump has been reinstalled, all tightened up, and I've done a test turn on the crank, and everything is working very smoothly, and the pump spindle is turning, so that's good. So there's a couple of things we do now. The first is we'll put the cam chain drive gear on its spindle, the whole of which you can see there above the crank, with the chain on it. The chain we've got here ready to go, that's been cleaned up and all oiled up. There's the sprocket on its pinion with its spindle that screws in. And then what we can also do is we can install the filter into the filter housing here with its cap, and also in that hole above there we'll put a drive extension rod and the top knot on there, and that then forms the tacho drive, and that's driven from the oil pump spindle, which we know turns. And when I was test turning it, I was looking down with a torch through that hole there, and that was turning nicely too. So we're ready to go. So we'll do those two jobs now, and then we'll be ready to put the motor into the frame. Well, after an almighty conundrum, we're there. So let me explain what's here first before I tell you all the trials and tribulations. So the cam chain sprocket with its idler gear at the back on its spindle is in. I've also put the filter in, filter cap, complete with oil pressure switch. Also the guide for the tacho drive, and obviously the one-piece chain is on, and that's at the moment that's just draped over. Now the issue that I had was that I couldn't get the gear stroke sprocket in with the chain ready to put over the sprocket, because this is a one-piece chain. So no matter what I did, I could get the sprocket stroke helical gear in without the chain and put the spindle in. You could do that by slanting it on its side and then pushing it up. But with the chain there ready to slot over the sprocket, you couldn't do it. And in the end I realised that the way that they probably were intending to build this at the factory is you slot this gear stroke chain wheel with the chain on it from the top of the tunnel down. However, the barrel slot isn't wide enough to do that, but if you raise the barrels up, the slot here underneath the barrel is. So what I had to do in the end was to lift the barrel sufficiently so I could get the gear in the space and then slot it down with the chain on, and then put the spindle through it, and that worked. At one point I was thinking I would have to possibly split the chain, but in the end we've done it. And the reason why I didn't realise that is because when I built the Bandit up, the engine was part built when I received it, so I didn't have to build this timing cover side up. So live and learn, but I can assure you it was quite a difficult job, and there's a lot of cursing and swearing, so it's a good job that I didn't film it. But anyway, it's done and we now know how to do it. Other bits and pieces, I've also put in the oil feed pipe there for the head, because that's quite awkward and you have to do that in stages as well, but that's done as well. It's not in loosely at the moment, but it's in position, and it is quite a fiddly job to do that, so I've done it. So this unit now is at a stage where I can put it into the frame, so I'm going to do that now. And what I'm going to do is, initially we're just going to mount it up on 2 points. So we've got a bolt to go through these two lugs here, the engine sits in between those, and then similarly we've got the ones at the front. So what I'm going to do is we'll place a cloth over the bottom, sit the engine in just resting on that cloth, and then we'll put the front stud in. Sorry, it is a bolt, and then we'll pivot the engine up into position to get the lower one in. So that's what we'll do now, and I'll let you know when I bring you back how long it took me to do it. But hopefully, obviously with the engine in that shape as it is at the moment, with not much internals really, the reason I've done that is because it's not too heavy and we should be able to lift it in okay. Right, let's give it a go. Okay, she's in. 30 minutes it took, mainly because it took a little time to just manoeuvre the engine in on the bottom to get the bottom stud in. Required a bit of levering from both sides really, so it was a bit of a job with just one person. But anyway, all sorted. one or two chips just to touch up, mainly just on that mini engine plate just there actually when I was putting it in. But front mounts sorted, and then down the bottom, there we go. That's got to go a little bit further in yet, but the important thing is on the other side. Apologies, you're not going to be able to see this very well. It's rather dark. How can I get a bit more light on? Get out the other way a bit. There we go. So there's the other end of the stud. The nut's on there, and on the other side of the lug you can see there's the spacer there. As I say, quite why they did it like that I don't know. So apologies for the light, it's a little bit difficult to see, but at least you can just see that. So we've just got to pull that bolt through a little further and do up the 3/8 nut at this end, and you can get to it with a spanner on the back side of the oil pipes there. But again, nothing is ever straightforward. You know, a job like that, you just think, well, should the oil pump have been in or not, because the oil pipes are in the way slightly. So all sorts of little bits and pieces, and we'll no doubt never know what the assembly sequence was for these, what it intended to be. Other note is the tacho cable. Well, maybe it's not too bad. It looks a little short. It's not screwed on there properly quite just yet, but it was just there as a measure up. It looks a little bit short, but not too bad. There is a bit of play at this end, and it's caught up a little. There we go. So I think actually that's probably going to be okay. I'd like to use it because it is one of the original grey cables. So get a bit further away. There we go, bottom end in. Now the other consideration is, you know, should the head be on before you insert the motor? And I've done quite a bit of thinking about this, and also measured up the studs, and we should be okay. There should be enough room to sort of slide the head over the barrels with the studs already in the head. And there will be enough room then between the base of the barrels there and the frame at the top. Obviously the tank etc will be off when we do that, to get the head on with the rest of the motor in situ. So I think we can plough on. So the plan is that the rest of the work on the head is going to begin once I get the rebore barrels back for the Lightning. And just to remind people what we've got to do on the head, it looks complete, but we've got the tappet holes and the valve guide holes to remount to size, and then we've got to have some valve seat inserts. But anyway, they're going to the same engineer that is currently finishing off the reliner and bore of the A70 barrels, so that's all planned. So we're getting there. We have a bit of an engine in, so that looks a little bit more complete. The rolling chassis has been in that state for a while, waiting for the next stage, and now we're on our way, and we can get on with the gearbox. Once the gearbox is in, then we can get all the primary side on, and then we can get the rear engine plates on, and then we can get the rear brake pedal and rod on. So and then we can just wait for the head, but also we've got the wiring to finish off too, which we can do. So plenty to do, but still achievable before April. Right, I think that's it for now. Off we go in 2020, plenty to do, and we'll crack on with some more videos, hopefully in quick succession now. with our end of April target in mind. So it's good to be back. Hope the New Year's kicked off well for everybody. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your interest, any comments and any subscriptions, and I'll see you all again soon. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.